All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is so exciting. Two of my favorite people. So today we are going to talk about equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion from two lenses. The first lens is going to be as entrepreneurs. We're all entrepreneurs, but we're also individuals who've spent quality time in corporate America. So when you talk about diversity and inclusion, there's a different level of expectation regarding what that means when you're an entrepreneur versus when you're in the corporate space, but they all lead to the same value if it's done correctly. So my name is Tracy Harrell. I am president of It's All Bigger Than Me Consulting. This is what I do. D&I is my thing. I also spent 25 years in corporate America, 8 years at IBM, 14 years at Disney, and 5 years at Microsoft. So when I say I know the corporate space, I know what it takes to truly create not only diversity, but an inclusive culture where everyone can thrive. That's what we're here to talk about today. But my company's called It's All Bigger Than Me because it's bigger than me. So I'm going to talk about the two people that I have with me. So first, we're going to have Timothy Garner. Introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then we're going to have Dr. Ayana Cummings do the same. Who are you, and why is this idea of diversity and inclusion so important?
So thanks, Tracy. Yeah, my name's Timothy Garner. I am the CEO of a company called Harbor Digital. We are a small minority-owned IT resale company, but I also wear a different hat where I am a business development manager for a company called Epic Global. So I'm in the corporate space, and I am an entrepreneur as well. So, I get both sides of it, and I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that later or now. You tell me.
What do you want to tell us? Tell us about D&I as an entrepreneur versus D&I as it relates to being in corporate America. How do you get value? This session is about bringing value to entrepreneurs and to business leaders through diversity and inclusion.
So, I am a fan of diversity and inclusion. I think it is a must for a better world, a better society, and obviously better businesses. But as an entrepreneur that runs a small business, I try to stay fairly lean and mean. But, as my business would grow, I would hold no qualms with hiring whoever, the most qualified, the best qualified person to help me grow my business. On the corporate side, on the other side, in my business development with the company I work for, I'm actually blessed in a sense because that company has a push on diversity and inclusion, and hires based on merit, based on qualifications and capability. But we still walk a thin line from, as a man of color, I'm usually the unicorn in the room, right? And, when it comes down to having more of a diverse group, I think it just makes the company and organizations better. So I'm supportive of that. And hopefully, this little message and what Dr. Ayana Cummings is going to talk about is going to add some value to making diversity and inclusion more of a priority.
I love it. And when you talked previously about this idea of you as a small business owner, not necessarily focused on bringing new people in, but you said you were focused on the idea of diversity and thought, the understanding that the audience that you sell to is going to be more diverse, and that you need to add a level of focus on diversity and inclusion, and how that's benefited your business by thinking about diversity and inclusion in a holistic way.
Absolutely.
You're part of a community that's diverse, so that allows you and motivates you to want to think about inclusion differently as an entrepreneur as well.
Absolutely.
It's not just about hiring, it's about being a part of a community and cultivating a culture of inclusion, even if it's inclusion of thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, two heads are always better than one, right? And it doesn't matter what color, what race, what gender that additional head is, to have, other ideas from outside your norm is only going to make you a stronger, better person, business person, family man, or family woman. If we come to a point where we decide that, everybody's input is worthwhile, we're going to have a better community, stronger community, a lot less, things going off the rails or going off the tracks. We need to start making sure that people understand that we need to lift people up and help those that need that help, no matter what your color, race, creed is. It's all about creating a better world. So if we can do that, I'm all in.
I love it. I love it. Now, the next person I'm going to bring into this conversation is one of my favorite people, Dr. Ayana Cummings. I don't know if I mentioned that I'm president of the Seattle chapter of the National Black MBA Association, and Dr. Ayana is part of my board. She's our vice president of D&I. Ayana, tell us a little bit more about who you are, your business as an entrepreneur, as well as your corporate role.
Sure. Well, I am Ayana Cummings, and I am Chief Executive Officer of Tapestry Consulting, limited liability company located right here in Atlanta, Georgia, the dirty South, where I am from, born and raised. And we are so delighted that in 2020, last year, I'm coming up on 1 year anniversary. I was hired as Director of Diversity and Inclusion, which is now referred to by the acronym Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice, or DEI+J. For Compass Group. I started with the Compass Group Microsoft account and have since gotten responsibilities in areas respective to all of the national accounts at Compass Group. But my background goes about 21 or so years back to my first consulting contract and apprenticeship or mentorship, if you will, under none other than Dr. R. Roosevelt Thomas, who was the seminal diversity and diversification management consultant of his time. And so since that time, all of my scientific research at the doctoral level, now I'm doing some postdoctoral studies at the Georgia Institute of Technology, Georgia Tech here in Atlanta. All of that has centered around race relations, particularly the African-American experience with respect to executive minority career development. And I realized that I wanted to specialize in diversity, equity, and inclusion as a doctoral student when I first had that mentoring experience with Dr. R. Roosevelt Thomas. But what I didn't know at the time was that even with the PhD in industrial organizational psychology, the application of diversity, equity, inclusion principles, ideologies, frameworks, and whatnot permeate every aspect of business. It's not just the recruiting arm. It's not just the community outreach prong. It's performance appraisal, HR systems management, IT, cultural assessments and systems analyses and training and development and assessment and data analysis and just you name it, employee engagement, recognition, retention, career and professional development, mentoring, all of these things are relevant in the diversity, equity, inclusion space. And I knew that I had a home in finding my place in the diversity, equity, inclusion space as the Chief Executive Officer of my own company, and now as DEI and J Director with Compass Group National Accounts. And I also have had isolating experiences as the only African-American woman in an environment at the doctoral level. Of course, having graduated from a historically Black college or university at the undergraduate level and then transitioning into a predominantly white cohort, not environment, because actually the PhD program I was at was embedded at an institution that was very highly diverse when it came to ethnicity. But within my cohort, I was the only Black woman, the only Black person. And in that environment, in the doctoral program in general, there was only one other Black woman. And the experience, I must say, was very isolating. And as a result, the inclusion aspect was so important to me. And I knew that I had to go seek nurturance elsewhere. And that's when I transferred down to Clark Atlanta, got an MBA while I was getting my PhD. And so the rest of it is history, but the story unfolded as such with my interest in this space.
No, I love it. I mean, what I love about you is I see Timothy smiling too. We're just like, yes, yes, and yes. You have to have a passion for this work. And I think the reason this conversation, for BizFair was so important. And again, you guys are going to be part of a few dialogues, but this is about learning how, for small business owners, for business leaders, for everyone, how their business can be more successful through diversity and inclusion. And I like to say it's really through this lens of inclusion, creating a culture of inclusion, because you're basically saying you've been part of diverse spaces, but you haven't been necessarily included, which means you haven't been able to thrive. And what I said in the first session, right? So what I said in the very first session was this idea of us being able to truly thrive, us as business owners and as business leaders, being able to truly get the benefit of diversity, you must create inclusion. Like the business case for diversity never said just bring diverse people in and you're gonna have a more successful business. It said specifically bring in different and underrepresented voices and create a culture of inclusion, right? Create a learning culture of inclusion. And it's in that learning together, it's in that growing together that businesses can thrive, that individuals can thrive, that cultures will thrive and change, and that you will be more creative and more successful and more profitable. It's not automatic though. There's a level of intentionality that happens. So Timothy, I see you nodding your head here. As it relates to being intentional, like you're a successful business owner. You also have been successful in corporate America as well. When you think about this idea of truly being intentional, what advice would you share with the business owner about why inclusion is important and how they can be intentional, whether it relates to bringing people on board, the clients that they serve, and being a deeper part of a community?
Well, I think inclusion is not only important, but vital in every aspect of life itself. And we can see the history behind our country and the way things have happened, where if you don't include, you have people who, don't get up to the next level or don't get up to any level or become part of a system that is detriment to anyone that falls, who's not included. So, but the positive about inclusion is that you get so many different avenues and aspects of what's best for your business, for your person, for your life. So I think, when you're able to shed, those insecurities or those, unknowing feelings or uneducated feelings of what someone is and what they truly bring to the table. I say it to my kids all the time. It doesn't matter to me, what your preference is, what your sexual preference is, what, who you bring in this house, as long as they treat you in a way that is respectful, because you're going to get so much more from life by including people in your life that can add value that you would never think of because they're not like you. And then you can make, some educated decisions and not biased decisions about how you want to pursue life or be in life. You have to have that information. And I think it applies to everything, and more so in corporate America, because you see a pattern, especially on the business side, my 25 years of business experience, where I'm the only one. There's, this feeling of, as Dr. Ayana had said, that, just not being included. It was, you might have the diversity there, but you're not included. And I think, when you have that feeling and comfort, you can be your true self and add value like everyone else. So, I think it's invaluable to make sure that this is a focus in business and life in the world, that we, include people. So of all kinds, shapes and colors. So.
I love that. And Dr. Ayana, I know you wanted to talk a little bit, and it's key to what he just shared, this idea of trust. The work that I do and the training that I do, again, I've laid out a very clear plan. This is Tracy Harrell. It's all bigger than me consulting. And we've done this work through National Black MBA Association. And it's a national initiative. And it is about changing the status quo. How you do it as a leader, how you do it as a business owner, and how you do it as a corporate leader. It all involves a number of different elements, right? I have a 7-step process, right? But one of the key elements, one of the silver threads or golden threads that goes through this process is this idea of trust. Mm-hmm. So trust is important in order to truly create an inclusive culture, to truly think about why diversity is important, and really to embrace that process in a holistic way to change the system, right? So talk a little bit to us, Ayana, specifically, we have like 5 minutes here left in this conversation. If you could, and there's more to come, this is just this for this clip, tell us a little bit about inclusion and why trust is so important and how people can leverage trust to do the speed of trust. I mean, we know about that with Covey, right? Tell us a little bit about what you'd like to impart.
Okay, well, a couple of things is that all leaders want to be followed, but not every leader is worth following. Why? Because the verbiage and the actions don't line up all the time. You know, you don't trust someone when they say one thing and do another. And you have people committing to things and saying they're going to do diversity and inclusion, they're going to increase representation on their board of directors, or they're going to commit a certain dollar amount of funds to community outreach in underserved communities and so forth. But the trust wanes over time when the actions are not lined up, or when you don't involve members of those communities or of the environment itself in the process as you plan how you're going to impact the people that really make the place. And so I think we have to learn how to be accountable for our verbiage, how to be accountable for our actions, and prevent harm in the sense that we prevent the misalignment between our actions and our verbiage. And that's a big summary, and it could be a real long paper under that, but that's the headline.
No, that's great. I actually love that a lot. What I really what I know to be one of the facts is that trust is everything when it comes to aligning your words with your actions. So Timothy, I saw you nodding your head as she was speaking. When I think about this idea of trust and why it's important and how it works, again, I call the one of the solutions that I've created with others, again, many others. It's called embracing transformational leadership with heart and soul. Embracing transformational leadership with heart and soul, which means we go on this journey together. It doesn't matter where you are. My famous quote is that being in is the win. If you say you are committed to this and you're willing to take those steps to achieve a different outcome, being in is the win, right? When no one's going to judge you, there's no judgment. We don't use language that is anything other than clear and simple. I kind of leverage a technology. You're an IT guy. So I leverage a technology implementation model that basically allows us to go through those phases of an implementation. It's change management, but it's really changing hearts and minds. So tell us a little bit about, again, why you were nodding your head and what trust, the importance of trust to you as it relates to inclusion, truly creating a learning culture of inclusion.
Well, I mean, I just think it's, the way I was raised, your word is your bond, right? And when you get into corporate America, you realize that that's not necessarily always the case. I've been fortunate to work for some great companies where, a lot of my mentors and managers were, of the same ilk, trust and their word being their bond. But it's no different from what I tell my kids, specifically my 16-year-old son, who, has a need to elaborate on things where I'm just like, you only get one chance for people to trust you. Because even in life, as your father, right, as you start to elaborate on the stories where I know the truth, I start to lose a little less trust every time it happens. And that's no different in corporate America. That's no different than diversity and inclusion. We hear it all the time, as Dr. Ayana said. You hear it all the time about what's going to happen and what they're going to do and how they're going to, add, funds to a particular area. And over time, when it doesn't happen, when, you don't add members to your board, where, the funds aren't there, you lose a little bit of that trust every time. So, it's key that you stay consistent in yourself. And I try to live by that. I was raised by an incredible woman. My mother was incredible, God rest her soul, where she said to me constantly, treat people the way you want to be treated, and you only got one chance to earn someone's trust. Because even if you're still with them down the road, if you've ever lost some of their trust, you've lost that little bit, right? So
yeah. I love this so much because the people are looking for this major this. I mean, we do have clear processes and we know exactly. I feel like that's the beauty of this process right now is that we do know how to create inclusion in business. We know how to help people to align their words with their actions. That hasn't been the case for so long. We actually do know how to do it now. And that's really the work that I'm truly passionate about. we talk about immediate wins and long-term change. And you said you wrote your dissertation, Dr. Ayana, on trust. All right. And I love that.
Really, compliance and trust of a Black man in a leadership role as the executive that they had to either comply with or trust.
Right.
And it was very interesting that we couldn't really statistically get significant results because many of the people didn't want to identify what their ethnicity was. They didn't see the value of placing their identity on the application. They opted out. So we didn't get statistically significant results on my findings, but that is something that is another topic for another day.
Yes.
I did want to add to this discussion, and then I'm going to jump off in a minute or so, Tracy, is that when you get the action lined up with the verbiage and it's just a one-off action, that leaves people waning in trust as well. Because you can do an initiative and do, a one-off strategy that's just a one-time deal. And then they never have anything else that is substantive that changes the real culture for inclusivity in the organization.
Exactly. So we're all going to drop in 1 minute, and there's going to be another group that's going to come in, and we're going to have some more conversations. I want to say thank you to both of you. There will be more conversations with you both, deeper conversations for us to get into this. So what you heard today is a quick recap, is this idea of it's not just about where we are, right? It's about this thing does not want to be quiet. Okay. So what it's really about is how do we together change the status quo? And it's through trust. It's through aligning your words with your actions. And we are going to help you do that. Today, if you take nothing from this, think about what you say and what you do. Think about the people that you connect with. You've heard us talk about the importance of inclusion of thoughts and actions, but really make sure your actions align with the words that you share on a daily basis. So this is Tracy Harrell, Dr. Ayana Cummings, and Timothy Garner.